So let's get started. This webinar is Teaching Investing with a Stock Game. This is Introduction to Personal Finance Lab Stock Game. I'm going to talk a little bit about stock games in general. I'm going to talk about the stuff that's special on Personal Finance Lab. And there should be some time for questions and answers at the end too. So I've got a lot of good resources for you. Based on the poll that we have seen, I see that most of the people here have not ever used a stock game in their class before. That's fine. I will go through from the top. So my name is Kevin Smith. I am the Director of Product Development at Personal Finance Lab. That means that most of the stuff that you see here have had some hand in helping shape. It also means that your feedback is extremely valuable to us. Most of the new features that we add to a platform come from teachers. So if any comments or questions, I will have my contact information at the end that you can send in to me. So to start out, for those of you who've never used a stock game before, what is a stock game? The concept of it is that your students will be getting practice cash they can use to learn how to invest. One of the biggest barriers to people investing on their own is just they're kind of afraid of it. It seems like it's a very complicated way, and if you make a mistake, you can lose a lot of money. Stock games were designed to basically break that barrier down. You can lose money in the stock market, but generally you're probably not going to unless you're doing some really crazy stuff. It's one of the best ways to build up a retirement fund. And stock games are a way to introduce students to the concepts of investing without any risk, because it's just practice cash. And then it uses all real stock. So, the real companies in the real markets, we have a data feed where, it's be able to react to the news as it happens and get that real world hands-on experience with it. So students build and manage a portfolio over the course of weeks or months. And how long you run your stock game depends on your class. Longer is usually better than shorter, but even a little short game, just giving that students some of that exposure is very important. And I'll talk about some of the different scenarios you can use for your own class a little bit later in the presentation. The rules for what and how students invest are usually determined by the teacher. So there's a few different stock games out in the market. One of the more popular ones from years ago was relying on statewide challenges where the teacher would just sign up their class and the students participate. Those are great. We actually run challenges like that ourselves in the spring and the fall. But they don't give the teacher the same control over their class. They're just kind of locked into whatever the organizer decided. And so I'm going to talk about some of the scenarios that you can use for your class once we get into the details. So our stock game in particular, we are the top of the line stock game in the market. The Personal Finance Lab stock game is based on the StockTrack stock game. We are the same company. It's a university investing platform used in, I think, 75% of business schools in the United States. It's been around since 1990, and it's been continuously updated and improved ever since. It has tons of settings for flexibility for classes, built-in tools for students and teachers, and one of the most important things is our support team. We have live support available for both teachers and students during market hours. If you are getting to us after market hours, we always get back to everybody within a business day too. Especially if it's your first time, having that level of support is very helpful. Every teacher who uses Personal Finance Lab also has a dedicated account manager who can walk through setting up class, troubleshooting their issues, and all that kind of stuff. So we find that as we add more features and options and things, it makes it great for power users, teachers, but we also want to make sure that it gets a little bit easier for the first-time teachers as well. Like I said, as that poll data is coming in, a lot of teachers attending here have not used one before, so that makes it even more important. We also give lots of webinars and things like this to help newcomers get more familiar with how things work. So I'm going to talk about some of the tools that are built into Personal Finance Lab, kind of in the order that it would actually matter for a class. So the first one, before a student actually goes to buy or sell anything in portfolio, which is kind of the point of the stock game, as teachers, you want to make sure that they're actually learning something. They're not just playing around. That way, the students who are overexcited, you can kind of pare down their enthusiasm and make sure that they're actually learning something from it. But almost as importantly, the students who just don't know this stuff, they've never heard what a stock is, they're not left behind. And you as the teacher don't need to spend so much class time on the setup. Our game itself has a lot of things built into it to help with that. So the research tools that we have built in, I'm going to first talk about them and I'm going to show them. First, automatic tutorials and tours. Probably the most important thing as students get introduced to the stock game that you set up for your class. We have tutorial videos built in for it. You can create those as an assignment that prompts them to see them as soon as they log in and help them find their way around, not get lost. And they have tours that launch as well. As soon as a student lands on the page, it really prompts them, here's what you're looking at and here's how you do it. Let me pull up Personal Finance Lab real quick to actually show this off. Log into, here it is. This is what my dashboard looks like as a student when I log in for the first time. And there's a lot of stuff here because I also had the budgeting game. I had a webinar about that last week. I'm not going to talk about it too much here. But what you're going to see is this section here in the top left takes kind of the lion's share of my attention. This is an assignment. And right now I just have a pre-test I've been assigned. My teacher can actually assign me tutorial videos about the stock game. So what is a portfolio and how do I manage it? What is a stock and how do I actually make a stock trade? Those kinds of things. We also have a bunch of beginners lessons built into it. If you go to the assignments page here, I could show you. Actually, we have these 10 things, 10 topics every student should know when starting the stock game. What is a stock? What is a ticker symbol? What is a quote? How do I place an order? And then again, these tutorial videos are built into it too, to take some of the burden off of the teacher of trying to walk the students through every single thing, and a little bit more on our end of kind of walking it through it based on what we've seen really works. So if I were to, for example, put these tasks in here and create my assignment called, what is it? Getting started with investing. I'm going to create this. And then when my students go to their dashboard, they'll see these things that I asked them to do assigned here. It shows about how much time they need to do for each one. So and then I also mentioned the tour. The first time a student logs in, we also prompt them with a tour, and it tells them what they're looking at here. We don't want to get overwhelmed. So it kind of highlights the stuff that they're looking at, and it highlights different things in the menu. And we have the same thing on the trading pages. It really highlights, here's what this is, here's how it works. And it works in conjunction with those tutorial videos to really help the students get started. Going back to the presentation, the next one, charts and research at trading. So this is, student has gotten a little bit more familiar with what the platform is, and they want to actually buy something. In the trading pit, again, I have my tour here walking me through what all of this stuff is that I'm looking at. And I have, again, another tutorial video here making sure I can see what I'm doing. But let's say I want to, maybe I want to buy Ford. I can just start typing Ford with a symbol lookup built into here. And then it loads up some of the quote information. It loads up a chart. You know, this is color coded. It's red if the stock is down for the day. It's green if it's going up for the day. For students who are getting more into it and might have seen some of this stuff before, we actually have what we call our advanced chart, which is a lot more, there's tons of tools and settings and things. You can scroll in and out, all kinds of stuff. If I scroll down here, I can see who is this company, what do they do? I can see news stories that mention this stock. I can see analyst ratings. What is Wall Street in general saying about this? So I'm not going in here blind. Price history, so I can see has this stock's been going up and down over a longer period of time. For classes who are getting a little bit more into the investing side, financial statements, income statement, balance sheet, cash flow statement, going back 20 years, and detailed quote information gets all the PE ratios and all that kind of stuff too. So a lot of stuff is packed in here. And that's just right on the trading pit. I haven't even gotten to the research center yet, which I'm about to, which takes me to the next slide, actually, is the research center itself. So the built-in research center, I just showed you one stock. But if you were to look at the investing research tab up here, we have more stuff about everything you could possibly need to know to make a trade as a beginner. So again, here we have the symbol lookup I was talking about. By default, I have GE Aerospace is kind of our default here. Charts, news, PE ratios, all that kind of stuff. And I can go through a lot of other things in here too that weren't on the trading page. So accounting ratios, SEC filings. It really comes down to how detailed do you want to get into this with your class. I would say most teachers use about 10% of the stuff that's in here. But if you have like investing clubs or a higher level like investing class, you can get more and more into it. Basically, the idea is that you won't need to be using a bunch of other resources for students to do their research. It's all kind of built in right here to help them get started. And then just, you know, a student looking at all this for the first time, if you're looking at this for the first time, it's absolutely overwhelming, which is why we have the fourth of our tools here, of what we call the stock comparison tool. In investing research, there's an item here called basic research and comparing stocks. And it's also an assignment item in those 10 items that I selected to help students get started with it. And this is a tutorial of how you would actually do research on a stock for the first time. And we built this right into the stock game. And so this is before students even making a trade. It's really just the bare bones research of what does it mean to have a portfolio. It walks them through using the research tool. They can do a simple lookup to find their stock. And then it walks them through what are the things that they should be looking at when they're trying to make an investment. So how do I find the last price of a stock? It shows them exactly where it is on the page. They enter it here. What is earnings per share and why does it matter? And so it talks about what it is. It shows where you find it on the quote, and then it explains why you would care about what an earnings per share is. I'm going to go through this really quickly just so I can mention it. Dividends, another important factor, where it is. Then it starts talking about the financial statements. So it takes information from the income statement for the last couple of years, the balance sheet, again, for the last couple of years, and the cash flow statement for the last couple of years, because it's telling students it's important to look at how things have been changing over time. It shows a trend. Price change, yeah, and looking at the price history so they can see those charts. Is it moving up and down a lot? Is it volatile? And it's basically, is it or not? And what does the news say? So this really introduces the students to most of the basic functions of doing research and all the stuff that's in our research tool. And then once they put all the information in for one stock, it actually asks them to find another similar stock in the same sector. And what does a sector mean? What does an industry mean? It talks about that. And then it walks through our other tool we have in here, which is called a stock screener. Which is no, I can't find it off the top of my head. I'm probably using the wrong place, but we also have the sector explore. So explore stocks by sector. They can find the other stocks that match the stock that they were looking at originally. And this opens up again, in the research tab, it'll show here's the biggest stocks in the sector that you were looking at. So using these tools, they're able to get a little bit better feel for what does it mean to do some research. That way, when they go to make their first trade, they're going to feel better about it because they don't feel like they're going in blind. They feel like, okay, I've made an informed decision. That tool I was just showing you, it breaks down, shows which of the two stocks they're comparing is better in every category they put, and then they can even save it for later and they can look at it for reference. Or more importantly, if they want to show the teacher as part of an assignment, here's the research I did, and here's the trade that I made and why. So that's the basic research. Once students have actually done their basic research, I mentioned the assignments with the tutorials. There's a lot of stuff in there that you can do to make it a little bit easier for your students to understand what they're doing for investing. So there's these first 10 that I mentioned earlier. This is, if you're using the stock game, you really should be assigning these 10 for your class. We have another one called intermediate, which also goes into mutual funds and bonds and some of the financial statements. But if you really want to take things to the next level, there's all of our personal finance lessons on credit, on risk management, all that kinds of stuff. Our economics lessons, our business lessons, our financial math lessons, and then we actually have what we call our Investing 101 course. Or if you really want to let your students go learn a lot on their own, you can just assign these 10 chapters of investing course, make it required or not, maybe it's just optional for your class, and this goes through a lot of detail about how to do serious investing research, how to build their portfolio, and all that kind of stuff. Above the level of most high school and middle school personal finance classes, but if you're doing an investing club or if you have students in your class that are excited about investing and want to learn more, you can make those resources available to them. And what's interesting is you can give students rewards for finishing the assignment. You can say, if you do all that investing one-on-one course, I'm going to give you an extra $1,000 to your portfolio, just as a reward for doing it. You can do the same thing for all the other assignments too. And then that goes to the portfolio. It's just pure returns, and it kind of encourages them to stay engaged with the lessons that you're assigning in the class. But now I talked about all the prerequisite stuff about using that for the stock game. I'm going to actually talk about making a trade. So to make a trade, I actually kind of hinted at this earlier. I have my portfolio. I haven't traded anything yet. And it's giving me some recommendations. I have Bank of America, I have Disney, I have a few other stocks I could be trading there. I am interested in buying Coca-Cola. So I'm going to put Coca-Cola, and you can see it, the ticker symbol came up here, KO. I'm going to put a quantity of shares to buy. 100 seems, well, I have a $100,000 portfolio, so 100 shares is actually not that much. It's just $6,000. So I'm going to preview that. And the important thing for a class in Personal Finance Lab is that it prompts students to write why they're doing this. And a lot of times for the first couple of trades, they should be referring to some of the research they did or some of the outcomes of the stock comparison tool. As a teacher, you can see these notes later. So they're in all the annual reports, and the students can see them too if they need to make reports about how their portfolio did towards the end of the semester. I just put a short note here, and then they have their order placed. Once I've placed an order in the stock game menu here, I can see that in my portfolio. Your portfolio can be viewed like this. Is what we call the list view or a standard view. And this has a lot of details. So I've got the symbol, I hover over, I'll get my company name. I have buttons to go look at the charts and news from that quotes tool of this stock, quantity I bought, price paid. Personal Finance Lab uses a real-time stock game. So we use absolutely real-time data feed. The prices are within a couple seconds of the real market, but the exchanges don't let us show that data. They only let us show data with a 15-minute delay. So for the first 15 minutes after I make my trade, it's going to show delayed, and then it's going to show me the real stuff later. So students can't cheat because we use the real-time feed, but we're showing it with a little bit of a delay. Not that important, but that's why I have this shown here like that. Last price change, am I making or losing money on this? It was my portfolio return. So I'm losing a little bit of money right now because the price has already dropped a little bit since I bought it. That's okay. That happens. The name of the company, the industry it's in, so I can see all this information for my stock. I can also look at this as charts. So I can see how all of my stocks have been moving for the last day or month or year. And this one's color-coded if I'm making or losing money on this stock. So we make it easy for students to look at their portfolio in a number of different ways in order to make it a little bit more engaging for especially the beginner students who don't really know what they're doing. They have a few different ways to look at it. All of the reports are exportable. So again, if you need your students to be making reports or things later in the semester, they can download it. Google Drive or download a spreadsheet, and they can even send it to themselves by email. Actually, you can as a teacher, your students cannot because we don't actually collect student email addresses. Sorry about that. Yeah, so that's making a stock trade. I, as the student, also can be making trades in other securities. So mutual funds, it's very similar. The biggest difference is that with a mutual fund, you are trading in dollar amounts their shares, but otherwise, if they know the ticker symbol, they can trade their fund. And bonds, we make even simpler. It's what bond do you want to trade? Is it going to be a corporate bond or a treasury bond? And then we just list them out. The top 100 most popular corporate bonds and the 50 most popular treasury bonds, I believe it is. So since preview, trade it. If your students are trading bonds, it will have they will be getting their bond coupon payments on the coupon dates. So we handle all of that properly. Same thing with mutual funds with stocks. We handle all the dividends automatically. They just appear in the students' portfolios as cash. So benefits of a real-time stock game is instead of trying to track that on your own with a spreadsheet or something. Personal Finance Lab has more security types I'm not really going to get into. Just going in here, we have cryptocurrencies, we have options, we have cash spots, we have Forex, future options. So if you're a really high-level class or you're doing an investing club, you want to open up the entire investing universe, you've got a lot of options here. But if you're doing a very more basic personal finance class, usually teachers restrict it to stocks, mutual funds, and bonds, maybe cryptocurrencies, depending on how the teacher personally feels about it, whether or not they want to cover it in their class. Which gets me nicely into the next slide I have here, which is about session rules. So I mentioned this before, of you being able to customize your class. And you can, using use of your class, you have all kinds of options. The most popular ones are trading dates, so start and end. Security types, what can your students trade? Like I just mentioned, can they trade cryptocurrencies? Can they trade options? Yes or no? It's up to you. Diversification limits, so they can't put all their eggs in one basket. You can actually enforce that, whether they can borrow money, are they going to earn interest on cash, whitelist, blacklist. And it's actually easier for me to actually just go in here and go to create a session so I can show you some of the rules and what they might do. So you can see it. Give us 1 second. We do a custom game. Skip the budget game for now. So let's customize some of these settings. So currency, how much cash do you want your students to start with? Weekly deposits, I'll talk about that in a little bit. Minimum prices to outlaw penny stocks. If you allow students to borrow money, how much are they going to be charged on that loan? And if not, how much interest are they going to earn on cash? So just like if they have uninvested money in a savings account, we'll pay them money into their brokerage account for any cash they have not invested yet. Can they borrow money? Can they short sell? Can they day trade? How many trades can students make on their account? How many trades can they make in a day? Can students see each other's portfolios or just you? Do you want your teacher account to appear in the rankings? Some teachers want to drop out. I recommend it because the students really find that engaging. Some different types of rankings for more advanced classes. Like I mentioned, all those security types, equities, which is stocks and ETFs, cryptocurrencies, mutual funds, bonds, futures, future options, etc. And for equities, we also have a ton of international markets available. So United States and Toronto in North America, we have a bunch of European exchanges. It really just depends on how big you want to make this for your class. You can even configure all the commission types. Now, if you're doing a stock game for the first time, you might have noticed the very first step of that, there was an option for express settings. I highly recommend you use that because it'll get you more used to how you want to be managing your class. But as you get more and more into it, you can do a lot more interesting things. Some teachers, for example, say, I only want my students to be able to trade stocks in the S&P 500. And so they can create a list of stocks that students can trade from instead of just opening up the entire investing universe. I have a teacher asking, is a class the same as a session? Yes, we use those terms interchangeably in our system. So if you have, let's say you have 3 sections of the same class at your school. We have some teachers that like to separate them, have different sessions in our platform for it. That way, and we have other teachers that like to combine them. Really, the difference is that you will have the rankings separate or combined for the classes. So if the students all know each other, you'll probably do one big session. If you want to make your reporting a little bit easier, you might separate them out. It's really up to you. Yeah, and that's all the settings in here. And again, if you were to be using Personal Finance Lab, you'd have a personal account manager that can walk you through your specific class to walk through how that would work. And actually, let me go into the last rule I forgot to mention, which is the diversification rules. Position limit means how much a student can put in any one stock. So let's say I put a 20% position limit. Students can put no more than 20% of their portfolio in a single stock. So they have to buy at least 5 different things in order to spend all their cash. A diversification limit is how much of their portfolio can they put in all stocks. So 100% means they can put all their money into stocks. If you do 75%, that means they can put 75% of their money in stocks, but then that last 25%, at least 25%, they'll need to put in mutual funds or bonds. So if you really want students to be able to be exposed to these other security types and not just focus on stocks, you have tools and levers you can do to do that. From there, I want to talk about the reports and rankings. So making a trade is all well and good, and you have your portfolio, and that's nice. But students are competitive, and the rankings on a stock game are probably the most popular page, except for looking at your portfolio itself, because the students really like to see how they're doing compared to the rest of the class. And you as a teacher want to stay in control of what's going on. So let me real quick show you some of the setting or some of the reports that you have. First, we have the student rankings. And the student rankings is going to list every student in your class, the current rank. They'll have badges showing that they're going to earn as they're going through the site. Badges are earned based on completing lessons, making trades, just improving their general subject mastery, username, portfolio value, and the percentage return. They can see their ranking overall, or by the week, or by the month, and they can even go back in time and see what the rankings were in previous days. This button here is only visible if you have the public portfolios turned on for your class. I mentioned that very briefly. That lets students see each other's trades, which means that if they click this, they'll see, oh, that's the open positions of that student, that's the trades they've made, some of the detailed balances, all that kind of thing. You as a teacher have a ton more reports. So I go up here, I have section summary is how many students, how many trades have been made. Activity report shows me every day how many trades and orders are being placed by different students. Diversification report, what's the breakdown of stocks, bonds, and funds across my class? This is historical, so I don't have any data for the dates, so it's blank. Ranking report, this is similar to the student ranking report I just showed, but it's for end of day yesterday. You see, as of 9/9. And you as a teacher have the ability to not just see everybody's trades, regardless, because regardless of what the rules are, you can also add and remove cash from students' accounts. You can see a chart showing how their portfolio has been performing over the course of the semester compared to the benchmark. And you can even reset students back to the start. If you have a student who really screwed something up and are really upset, you can just reset them back to the beginning. Historical ranking, same stuff going back in time. Registration file is a very important one. This one lets you reset your students' passwords if you need to, and it lets you send messages that appear in the message center. Teachers generally have better ways to do that through an LMS, but we have an ability to do that through here as well. And if a student got into your class who shouldn't be, you can kick them out with the remove button. And you also have the ability to change their username if they put something that you find objectionable. User accounts, more data. Reports, this is actually, you can export all of the data for your class into one giant spreadsheet. And top trade securities, this is a fun report that you can have it gives you an idea of what's in the most popular stocks in your class. And so if you want a kind of a bell ringer, you can look at the top trade securities report, and you can use that as a discussion point for your class. And there's even a custom report. So if all that stuff I just showed you wasn't enough, you can build your own. You choose what data you want to be seeing, and then the report will have all that data available for you, including the buttons like resetting a password you can have with all the other things. So lots and lots of stuff to give you full control of your class. You have a 360-degree view of what your students are doing, and you have lots of tools and buttons and levers you can use to adjust things if you so choose. So now I've talked about all that stuff that exists. The big question is, what are you going to do with it? So how would a teacher structure their class for success in a stock game? And that's what I'm going to talk about next year. Is sample stock game scenarios. So the classic stock game, like if you were to be using a stock game back 20 years ago, and what most of the state Council of Economic Education were recommending is $100,000 in starting cash. And the reason it's so much money is for students to have enough money to really diversify and buy a bunch of different stocks at different prices. You'd use equities, which means stocks and ETFs, mutual funds and bonds. You put a 20% position limit. So I mentioned earlier, you have your students have to put, you have to have at least 5 stocks to use up your cash. And they said no day trading, no short selling, no margin trading, no fractional trading, basically just buying and selling stocks, bonds, and mutual funds with a $3 minimum stock price. That way students can't trade penny stocks. And this is still very popular. A lot of students love this, and there's tons of lesson plans and things that are based on this type of stock game. Now, we contrast this with what we call modern rules. We call them the modern rules because this is the feedback that we've gotten from a lot of teachers who've been using it over the last 5 years or so. And what they found is that $100,000 is actually discouraging students from getting involved in investing, because they're basically saying investing is a rich man's game. And it's not. Everyone needs to know to do it. And so cutting it down to $1,000 makes it a lot more tangible for most students. They're going to have $1,000 at some point. They can think about what they would do with it. That also pairs down to this other rule where they turn on the day trading, short selling, margin trading, fractional trading. Margin trading kind of on the fence, but the other rule is turning it on. It really just helps improve class engagement. And no, you're not teaching your students how to day trade. And no, you're not teaching your students to short sell. But they do exist in the real world. And for the students who are interested in that kind of thing, opening that door keeps the whole game a more educational experience for everybody. Fractional trading has come up especially important in the last 10 years or so with the rise of Robinhood, where you can buy, $5 of Apple instead of 1 share of Apple. And that matters a lot when we're talking about this $1,000 starting cash, because they could still divide up their portfolio in a very well-diversified portfolio for $50,000 because they can do fractional trading. And margin trading is kind of up to taste for the teacher, but it lets students get a little bit more buying power. And it also has a little bit of a lesson on credit, because if they do use their margin and they're borrowing money, they're paying interest on it. And we do continue to recommend the $3 minimum stock price because penny stocks just kind of get messy for students. A couple more sample scenarios that you can use is teams. So teams in Personal Finance Lab refers to our teams functionality. And if you were to go into the admin reports, there's an option to manage teams. When you set up a team, all of your students still have their own accounts. So they all make their own trades. They have their own portfolio. If you have assignments, you're using that. All the assignments are on their own. But you can put multiple students into a team. And if they're in a team, their portfolios also get aggregated together into one team portfolio. And so they can see what all the other team members have been doing, what's the total team portfolio look like. And importantly, there's also team rankings. So they can see how their team is doing compared to all the other teams in the class. The team rankings are based on percentage return. So if you have one team with 5 team members and a total portfolio value of $5,000, another team with 6 members and a total portfolio value of $6,000, they're going to be based on who's actually doing better, not just who actually has more team members. This contrasts with old types of teams that you might have seen in stock games years ago. In those versions, all the students are sharing an account. We don't like that, mostly because if you do that, it's hard to tell which team members are actually contributing or not. It takes away the individuality. And so especially if you're trying to use the assignments where students are doing the learning activities, having the individuality with the student, you can actually see what each student is doing is important, which is why we do it this way with the team aggregation. And then we have a few more rules that you can play around with for your class. One of them we call the retirement account. And this one is really cut down. Your students are only starting with $500 in cash. You're not using position limit because with that little amount of money, they might not need a position limit right away. They might be able to only buy 1 or 2 stocks. But we use this other rule that I kind of skipped over earlier called weekly deposits. With weekly deposits, you as a teacher say, every week, Monday morning, I'm going to be adding more cash to all the students in my class. And they're just going to have that cash in their portfolio when they log in on Monday morning, and they can buy other things with it. So every week that your game is going on, students get a little bit more cash, and they need to use it. They need to learn to continually invest. And so it's more directly mimicking a retirement portfolio, where every month you'd be making a retirement contribution, and you can decide what you're going to be doing with that money. And then you can decide, after 5 weeks and the students have $1,000, now I'm going to put a position limit. You can edit these rules later and say, okay, now I have a position limit. You guys have $1,000 now. You need to rebalance your portfolio according to the 20% rule or 50% rule even, where you can't put all your eggs in one basket. So you can layer these things in as the semester is going to kind of introduce these concepts as you talk about them in class. The next recommended game scenario is what we call the long game. A lot of teachers like to do a 6 to 8, 10-week game, sometimes a little bit longer if their class allows it. But for students to really get the most they can out of a stock game, make it as long as you possibly can. So maybe you're only grading them for what they do for the first 10 weeks, but let the game go for a full year. That way students can continually monitor their portfolio over a longer period of time. We work with some universities where first semester freshman year students get a portfolio and they're expected to manage it for the next 4 years. And they have, in their finance program, they have checkpoints they have in various finance classes that talk about how their portfolio has been doing over those 4 years and what have they been doing to maintain it. The longer you go, the better, but it really comes down to how you as the teacher are able to follow up with your students. if you're not going to be talking to them after your class ends 9 weeks from now, there's not really a big point in letting the game go much longer than that. But it's the longer the better in general. And the last one is our newest recommended rules. If you are taking a personal finance class and you're also using personal finance-led budgeting game, you can do what we call combo games. That lets you have students move money from the budgeting game savings into their investing portfolio. So the stock game would start with very little money, maybe $1, maybe $1,000. But then students, as they're saving money in the budgeting game, build it into their stock game. So otherwise, it follows what I was describing as the modern rules. And this is really the best way to teach about investing if you can, like if you're using both games, because it really directly mimics the real world. You're saving money and then you're investing it. And then in the budgeting game, they're choosing how much they're saving, how much they put in their savings account for emergency fund, how much they're putting in investing accounts for long-term retirement. All those work really well. From here, maybe you've set up your game. Maybe I've given you some ideas of what settings you want to use. Maybe you'd use the express settings. The biggest question you'd have left is, how do I grade it? Which is a very good question. It's kind of one of the big things for stocking, because you're not going to give students a grade based on their portfolio return, because especially over a very short period of time, that is not really an indicative of did they learn anything. But if you go into the Personal Finance Lab resources page, we have a ton of resources to help teachers decide how they're going to grade their class. We have our teacher's guide, we have our stock game guide, and we have lesson plans, presentations, and very importantly, we have grading rubrics. You, of course, are able to choose how you do it specifically, but this is to help get you started. So here's one of the grading rubrics that we have a portfolio project. This one has the students working through the stock game in teams, and it has 2 check-in points. At between half and midway through the point of the game, the team talks about how well they did how well they're following their original strategy. And so they can talk about who's been doing the team roles. They give you a rubric of how they can actually go through it. And then we have a student packet worksheet as well to work through how those work. And we have another, this one's for a longer game of, again, this one's dividing students into teams, and it has the grading rubric how well students are actually following this. So I can send out, when we send out the follow-up with the recording of this, I'm going to include the links to the grading rubric. And we have them for the budgeting game too. And it's just as an idea of how you'd grade your class. Really what it comes down to for most teachers when they grade this is it's a participation. Did the students build their portfolio? Are they using those trading notes? And they'll do a few check-ins throughout the semester of how did it go for you? What strategy do you have? And did your strategy follow the principles that are laid out of, is it a diversification? Are you doing sectors, that kind of thing? And maybe they'll give bonus points if the portfolio is doing well, and no bonus points if the portfolio is not doing well. But yeah, there's built-in energy. If this is open to the public, will your presentation slides also be available after the webinar? Absolutely, they will. I will include the slides from this here, but also in our teacher resources here. We also have a presentation library that covers things like a pre-built presentation of what is a stock or what is inflation. All that stuff you can get too because it's built into our teacher resources. But I'll include links to both of that as well. And we are actually out of time. I'm actually going over, sorry about that. But if you want to get in touch, you can send us an email at info@personalfinancelab.com to connect with the account manager in your area who can help get you set up with a custom game for your class. If you have any technical questions about how the platform works, you can also reach out to me directly at kevin@personalfinancelab.com. But yeah, I'll open it up for questions. You can post anything you have to the QA. Otherwise, I will be distributing the recording and these slides by email after the meeting.